So if you've been stuck on pull-ups or you want to improve your heavy weighted pull-ups, you got to think about first why you may be stalling. And this just might be fine depending on your level and where you're at. Generally, if you're a beginner, you're going to see gains quicker than if you're an advanced, and you might just have to be more patient. However, here are some things. So first of all, the style of your pull-up. If you're doing pull-ups in a manner where you're stopping at the bottom of each rep and you're not using any momentum to come up, that's typically going to be harder than if you're using momentum. So as you're going up and coming down, you're using the stretch shortening cycle. The stretch shortening cycle essentially stores energy in the tendons, and the tendons then reuse that energy, kinetic energy, and you're going to be able to bounce out of the hole, similar to a squat. So in a squat, you can bounce out. If you pause at the bottom, you're kind of storing that energy, or you're not able to reuse that energy as effectively in the tendons. So that's a slightly different type of adaptation. So in a heavy 1RM max 10 pull-up, you might get a little bit of momentum as you're coming through with your head and then coming back, getting a little bit of stretch shortening, but you're not getting probably as much as you would if you're banging out pull-ups and using the stretch shortening cycle or what. So I'd say if you're consistently using the sort of faster stretch shortening style of pull-up, it might be a good idea to try and use dead stop pull-ups, where you're starting from a standstill, you're starting in the weakest, most disadvantaged position for your muscles, because they are quite stretched at the beginning, and you're going to have to contract them in that weakened position, and therefore doing them dead stop is going to make you stronger in that lengthened position. And when you're moving to heavier and heavier weights, it's going to probably help you be able to get that initial momentum started. Secondly, adding weight or reps or tempo is great. However, if you find that you're quite slow in developing your force, it might be a good idea to start tracking the velocity as well of your pull-ups. So you can use a free velocity tracker. Some of them only track, or actually a lot of them only track weights. So they're generally used for barbell movements such as the clean. But a way around this is to simply use a small round plate on a belt. Maybe it could be 5 kilos or so, and just progress on increasing the velocity week to week instead of any weight. So as we know, as velocity increases, the faster you can accelerate something, generally the more power you needed to accelerate. So your power is going to increase over time. The great benefit of that is you're going to increase the rate at which you can produce force. Another benefit is you're not going to be doing the same heavy lifts all the time. You're changing your stimulus and you have some variability, and that's going to reduce, the third thing, any sort of tendinopathy issues that you get. So with these styles of sets, you're only doing maybe 3 reps at most, and you're really focusing on it, having the intent to really pull as high and as fast as you can. So as you're seeing that velocity increase over time, that's going to give you some feedback instead of using weight or reps. I found doing this is just going to help you be able to explode out the bottom with heavier weights. The third part we want to look at is the hypertrophy of a muscle, because a bigger muscle is going to have more strength potential for your pulling. So how do we do that? So we can look at a model called the effective reps model, and this model is not perfect. However, it's a good starting point to look at hypertrophy. So in the model, it suggests that mechanical tension is the number one way to generate hypertrophy. So mechanical tension under, I guess, some fatigue as well. And the reason they suggest this is because it stimulates all the muscle fiber types in your muscle that you have. So the type 1, the type 2. However, the type 2 muscle fiber types have more ability to grow than the type 1. So in an effective rep, it's 100% stimulated the muscle, and therefore has the most potential to grow, and it has the most mechanical tension on it. So that's I guess the theory behind the model itself. However, it's not perfect. So if you were, they suggest 5 effective reps is where you're getting the most mechanical tension. So if you were at an 85%, if you 1 rep max, that's around 5 rep max, you're going to be stimulating 100% of those fibers for all 5 of those reps. And they call that's 5 effective reps. Whereas if you're at 85%, you just did 1, you're still getting 1 effective rep. However, you could go all the way up to 5, and that would be failure for most people. So you can either, 1, train more in the lower end and heavier range. So if you're training in that 5 rep with 85% and you're doing like 2 or 3 reps, you're not going to failure, but you're getting 3 effective reps each time. Whereas if I was training to my 15 reps, so very high volume work, and I was getting to 15 reps, but I had more than 5 reps in reserve, I'm essentially getting, they call it 0 effective reps, or 0 reps where I'm recruiting 100% of that muscle fiber. So you can kind of see that if I'm going to train at higher volumes, let's say 15 or 20 reps, I'm going to have to go to failure to stimulate all the muscle fiber types. As those muscle fibers fatigue, they're going to recruit higher and higher threshold motor units, which are going to stimulate the type 2 muscle fibers. Whereas if I'm training with heavier weights, 85% or so, and I'm just going to 3 reps and I'm leaving around 2 in the tank, I'm still getting 3 effective reps, even though I'm not going to failure. Whereas if I train to 15 reps and I'm getting to that point, but I still have more than 5, you're not getting those effective reps. So I would probably have to train and get 18 reps to get the same result, leaving 2 in the tank. So that's how I would look at training for hypertrophy, and it's up to you sort of which route you want to go down. But the thing is, it can be a good idea to train with accessories in the higher rep ranges, because not every movement yields itself to heavy reps, and it could be dangerous for some people, and you can hurt yourself potentially. So that's why maybe doing higher reps of straight arm lat pull down, for example, where you're keeping your form relatively good and you're hitting the target muscle. That's another thing you got to think about. So if you're training anywhere from 8 to 15 reps is probably good for hypertrophy, as long as you're pushing, close to failure. If you're not, then you're just going to have to do more sets to get more effective reps. So really, I've used a lot of these different things and just combining everything together to really, you want to look at variability to stimulate some different adaptations or stress your body in a different way that it hasn't been before, so that it can adapt. Whether that's doing dead stops if you haven't done them, whether that's tracking velocity and trying to really push the power end of it, or maybe adding mass. I would use a plethora of these, because if you're just consistently doing the same thing and adapting to that, you get diminishing returns. So the best way to keep these returns coming back is to change the load, the adaptation, or the stimulus rather, so that you can get a better adaptation. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this or got any value out of it, just like and subscribe, but I'll see you in the next one.